Good morning. Yesterday I went over some mistaken beliefs about relapse and the role it plays in recovery. And today I'm going to talk some more about some different beliefs from Staying Sober by Gorski and Miller. And so the next belief that they talk about is the mistaken belief about warning signs of a relapse. That relapse is something that comes on spontaneously without warning. It's something that just happens and there's very little explanation. And they argue that's not true. They say a common mistaken belief is that relapse just suddenly and spontaneously occurs without warning signs. This belief produces a feeling of helplessness and powerlessness. Relapse remains a mysterious process over which recovering people have little or no control, and all they can do is hope and pray that relapse does not occur. The truth is that there are many warning signs that precede a relapse, and once you learn to recognize and manage the early warning signs of relapse, you can stop the relapse process before it has a chance to get started. So this is a very important concept for us to realize because, when I start veering away from my recovery goals, my recovery program, the first signs that that's happening have nothing to do with alcohol and drugs. In my recovery, I have not cravings for alcohol and drugs and thinking about alcohol and drugs have not played a huge role in my recovery. What has is going back to the patterns of thinking that I had about other people, the world around me, and myself when I was in my active addiction. Feelings of wanting to control the world around me. Feelings of self-interest, self-pity, self-centeredness, forming resentments against people. When I start to notice in my life, in recovery, when I start to notice that those are the primary feelings that are driving my day-to-day existence, that's the warning sign for me. And usually I can look at my behavior to see what's going on that might be contributing to that. A lot of times there is some outside stress that I can look at and say, okay, I'm under some stress, so it's understandable why I'm feeling this way, but what behaviors am I doing that are preventing me from coping healthily with it? So, for example, when I'm under a lot of stress, I eat poorly. I don't exercise as well. So I have to back off and make some time for those things. I also tend to stop going to meetings as much, which contributes to the way that I feel. Those are early warning signs of a relapse. Those are signs that I need to double down on my recovery program in order to get back on track so that I don't go to the place where I'm in so much pain that alcohol or drugs feel like a viable option for escaping it. So the next mistaken belief they talk about is motivation. And here's what they say about this. They say most recovering people observe the fact that relapse is a relatively frequent occurrence for a lot of people in recovery. As a result, they must develop some ways to explain why. Given the preceding mistaken beliefs, many recovering people develop the following erroneous beliefs. 1. If I relapse, I am not motivated to recover. 2. I will recover when I hurt enough as a result of my alcohol and drug use. 3. If I relapse, I have not hurt enough to want to stay sober. The conclusion that gets drawn from those mistaken beliefs is that relapse-prone people need to hurt more in order to interrupt their relapse patterns. Damn, that's tough. That's a tough pill for anyone to swallow. I would just reading it that way. There's got to be a better way to think about this. So they back that up here by saying this is a devastating conclusion for relapse-prone people to reach. It may cause you to question your sanity if you know that you want to get well but are unable to do it. This destroys self-worth and self-esteem and produces shame and guilt. And as we've discussed, all those feelings don't help in the recovery process. It is true that some chemical-dependent people relapse because they do not believe they are alcoholic, and they have not accepted their alcoholism because they have not developed consequences severe enough to convince themselves. But this relapse pattern only applies to people in the pre-treatment period of recovery. So you've got people who will go, and this is the way I think about this, you've got people who will go into treatment because they've encountered some pretty big problems in their life related to alcohol or drugs. And they'll go through the treatment process and then they relapse, but they never really truly believed they had a problem. They were there to get someone off their back or because the judge sent them there. And they never really thought they were like the people they were around in that place. So that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about are relapse-prone people who want to recover, who want to be sober, desperately. Most relapse-prone alcoholics are in terrible pain. In fact, the pain is so severe it prevents them from functioning while sober. The severe pain actually prevents them from benefiting from their recovery program. So we're talking about people who desperately want to get sober, but are in so much pain during their sobriety from alcohol and drugs that it makes it so they don't benefit from their sobriety. You know, I got sober and I started benefiting really quick from my sobriety. Anxiety started going away. Depression started going away. Motivation to do regular things came back. I felt better. There were all these benefits that came up, but there are other people who, when they get sober, they don't feel like that. Their pain is still so great that they can't see the immediate benefits of getting sober. Those are people who are relapse prone, and we've got to understand that it's not because they aren't motivated to get on the wagon. It's that they are still in so much pain that they don't experience the same benefits of sobriety that some of us do. And then there are also some mistaken beliefs about treatment and the effectiveness of treatment. And so the authors say many people who are recovering from addictive disease work very hard to recover. They attend counseling and group therapy, and they regularly attend 12-step and self-help groups, yet they fail to recover. These people develop one of two equally destructive mistaken beliefs. The first mistaken belief is that no form of treatment or self-help group can work. This simply is not true. There are many documented cases of relapse-prone patients who recovered after going back and reapplying themselves to recovery programs that had not worked before. An equally destructive belief is the complete opposite. This is the belief that treatment, AA plus professional counseling, is 100% effective for anyone who wants to recover, and the major cause of relapse is the decision to drop out of that treatment. With this belief, when people fail at treatment, they assume it is because there is something inherently wrong with them, making it impossible to recover. So these are folks who believe that, and I have heard people say this. I heard someone say this in a meeting recently, that they felt like they might be one of those people who was just constitutionally incapable of recovering. And that feeling stems from the mistaken belief that going to treatment, going to AA meetings is a 100% guarantee that you will recover and get sober. And they're to that point of giving up. And what the authors here argue is that you need to keep trying, and what they say is the fact is that there is good treatment and bad treatment. There is treatment that is effective for some but not for others, and there is much that is still unknown about what is effective treatment for addictive disease. Some people relapse because they have not attained the skills to stay sober, but that doesn't mean they cannot. And then they go on to say, a history of relapse is by no means a sign you cannot recover. It is not an indication that you are constitutionally incapable of recovery. It is an indication that you are a pretty typical alcoholic or chemically dependent person, and you need to roll up your sleeves and get back into treatment. Chances are good that if you find a program that uses relapse prevention planning, you will be able to achieve long-term sobriety, or at least learn to stay sober for longer periods of time, significantly improving your life. The purpose of this book is to show you how to begin doing just that with accurate information. So the mistaken beliefs about relapse are incredibly important for all of us to know, because I know I've heard, for example, the mistaken belief about people who relapse just need to experience more pain. I have heard that and I've believed that before. And so knowing that that's not necessarily the case, some people who need to experience more pain, for example, those people may not fully understand the depths of their disease. So that's a different situation. But when it comes to people who just cannot stay sober for long periods of time, even though they desperately want to, there are some other interactions going on there that additional treatment might be able to help. And that as long as they keep trying and keep attending treatment, there is a good chance that they will be able to achieve longer term sobriety than they have in the past. So, lots of good stuff here. Tomorrow we will move on to a section that better defines what relapse actually is, so that we can make sure we're talking about the right thing and not just the view that relapse is going back to using drugs and alcohol. A little bit different from that. So, hope to talk to you then, and have a great Sunday.